Thank you everyone for joining us today and to learn more about studying the RGU Masters in Physiotherapy pre-reg course in Robert Gordon University in Aberdeen. So first and foremost, I'd like to really be proud to say that thank you, Abby, for joining us. She is a student that's currently studying with us on the course, so she'll be here to answer questions that you may have. Feel free to type them in the Q&A box or the chat box. Either one works. And we will be answering all these questions once we finish the presentation. Okay, so first things and foremost, I would like to definitely say we are really, really proud to be named Scottish University of the Year by the Times and Sunday Times Good University Guide. And a little bit about RGU and where we are situated. So if you can see here, this is a map of the UK, and down here is where the England is, and up here is where Scotland is. So Aberdeen is actually the third largest city in Scotland after Glasgow and Edinburgh. We are accessible by plane, by car, or by train, depending on where you're coming from. If you're coming from London or Manchester, from Amsterdam, for example, it's about an hour and a half away. And if you're flying from Paris, for example, it's about 2 hours. I don't know why it takes so long. Actually, it doesn't. I think it's because the London airport is really busy, so they sort of like put in extra time to that. But if you're coming by car and you're driving from Glasgow or Edinburgh, it takes about 2 hours, 15 minutes to 2 hours and 45 minutes. And if it's by train, Glasgow and Edinburgh takes about 2.5 hours. And if you want to travel down to Newcastle, for example, it takes 4.5 hours, and all the way down to London is about 7.5 hours. And now that really depends on what kind of trains you are on as well. Some of them are direct and they're like the quickest ones, and some of them takes a little bit longer because there's many, many stops. However it is, if you are to ever take the train, I would definitely encourage you to sit on the left side of the train if you're traveling from Aberdeen down to London, or the right side of the train, especially on the Edinburgh-Glasgow part of that route, take it to sit on the right side towards Aberdeen, because that's where you will see all the really, really beautiful coastal view of the Scottish coast. I honestly think that it's one of the best train ride views that I've taken in like the number of travels that I've been to. Okay, don't take my word for it. Do have a look and see whether you agree with me or not. In terms of the international community that we have here, RGU has around 16,000 students from 147 countries. Our international students, they are approximately 1,200 of them. And I personally, as an alumni myself, I have had classmates from like Malawi, Nigeria, Korea, Japan. They are from all parts of the world. So I would say that it's a really good mix, because then you can enjoy speaking to other students from other parts of the world. I know, like for Abby's course, it's not so much the case, but you definitely do get a bits and bobs of students from other countries as well onto the course. The reason why Abby's course is so busy, less so the case, is because Canada is really, really popular for this course, and a lot of Canadian students tend to apply to this course. So that's the only reason why. Aside from that, I think in some ways, I feel like you also have that rapport where you get to meet other students from other parts of Canada as well. So that's kind of a good thing, I think. I'm not sure whether Abby agrees with me or not. All right, moving on. Other rankings that we have, we definitely always highly ranked in the UK for graduate employment consistently. We are ranked second in the UK by the QS Graduate Employability Rankings by 2020, and also second in Scotland for overall student satisfaction by the National Student Survey 2020. The rankings go up and down, but these are the more consistent ones that we are always ranked highly. There are also other rankings and achievements by different schools, and not to worry, the health science school is always top ranked in the UK. They're either the first or second or third most of the time anyway. right? The rankings changes all the time. So I would say that's not so important. I would definitely think that the quality of teaching is more important than anything else. And we are TEFCO awarded, so that puts us at the top 20% of the UK universities in terms of the quality teaching and learning. So a little bit of a photo of our campus. As you can see here, we are Riverside campus. And if you can see on the top right corner, that's where the library is. And I would definitely argue that the 9th floor of the library has one of the best Aberdeen city view. So if you ever come to RGU, do visit the 9th floor. I would say that it gives you 180 to 200 plus degree views of Aberdeen city. That is also where the main building is, the Sir Ian Wood building is. And next to it is where the students of the health science courses will be studying in, is the Ishbel Gordon building. And both of these buildings are connected. And if you move further down, it would be the RGU Sport building and then the Aberdeen Business School, and all the way down to this square building on the left corner, that is the Grey School of Art. So this is like the whole campus of RGU, and students during lunch hour, if they are bored or they just want to take a rest, and they normally would go for a walk along the riverside as well. So definitely something that you want to consider. And if you're taking the bus to campus, the buses always stop either outside the Ishbel Gordon building or on the road here, as you can see, which is only a 2 to 5 minute walk into the campus. So speaking of the School of Health Sciences and the course that you're interested in, which is the Masters in Physiotherapy Pre-Reg or the DPT Physiotherapy. In terms of like, after fulfilling all the GPA requirements, the next thing would be interviews. And normally the interviews are conducted in country, in Canada, I mean, in Toronto. And it's usually at the week beginning of March or August every year for the January intake of the year after. But currently, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, there are 4 dates already scheduled for March, and then there's 2 in April and 1 in May, but there'll be more added further down the line as well as the applications come in. So this is something that we will update you further on once we get more dates from the school. Okay, you can also speak to Abby about what the interview process is. I'm quite sure she'll be able to give you some tips and tricks on what to say or what to prepare for the interview at the very least. Okay, and then moving on. How will you learn? So the courses are really student-led approach. There's no lectures. It's mostly an active learning style. There's also directed study with application of theoretical knowledge in practicals and tutorials as well. And then there's like a spiral curriculum and volunteer patients and simulation as well as for you as a student. And in terms of placements, there are 6 placements across the 2 years, and it's really assessed on a pass or fail basis. It's 5 to 6 weeks long, and the final placement is an elective. So, and then the placements offer a really broad general clinical profile with sites across the length and breadth of Scotland, as well as one thing that you need to really pay attention to is there will be additional travel and accommodation costs. So please do expect that. So say, for example, if you know you have 2 really, really long placements and they are back to back, then maybe you need to look for somewhere that you can stay for short term instead of a 1-year lease, for example. Okay, and then if you're looking at how the course might look like for the 2 years, stage 1 is actually year 1. So when you start in January, there'll be induction, and then in February onwards, you have some classes, and then moving on towards your break, as well as clinical placement and things like that throughout the year. And then stage 2, you will start your year at the beginning, which is clinical placement, and then moving towards your project and your thesis and your clinical placement and other things as well. Okay, and in terms of cost of living, as you can see comparatively, Aberdeen is so much cheaper than London or even Manchester. So you will end up spending less money here than you would be studying in other parts of the UK. And I would also show you this cost of living guide here, which is just a a guide, I would say. In terms of accommodation, there is definitely some accommodations that are slightly cheaper than the one that RGU has, which is starting at £98 per week. If you're sharing a flat with your friends, definitely that is also something that you can consider, and it will lower down your cost as well. And in terms of transport, if you're not traveling to the university every day, you can buy a daily pass instead, and that will go down as well. There are also monthly bus fares. So £15 per week is the one that we've taken, but it can cost less than £15 per week if you take a monthly pass, for example. And then obviously, eating out and cinema tickets is not for everyone. Some people don't really enjoy going out to eat or going to cinema to watch a movie. So these are costs that you can save up. And that also applies to the gym memberships. There are also cheaper gym memberships outside. There is a student price for the gym memberships in RGU as well. And in terms of toiletries and food, it's really depending on how much you spend. I think I would like to probably talk more about like books and stationaries and mobile phone, because that's like quite a big difference. So I know like in Canada it's quite common where you are expected to buy books. However, in the UK it's not so much the case. You probably spend money on like stationery and maybe printing your assignments, but you don't need to really buy books. All the books are accessible. All the books in the library are accessible online. I would say most of them anyway. So you just need to really log in to the library server and download your journals and books that you want to read, and also use as referencing for your projects and your research. And so in terms of like mobile phone, for example, I would say it's more closer to the 10, 15, maybe £20 per month mark. I know it's really expensive in Canada, but it's actually pretty cheap here in the UK. Anyone who spends like 40, £50 per month, that's probably because they've signed up for a contract with the mobile provider, and it comes together with a phone. But if you're just getting a SIM only with like talk time and internet, it's definitely going to cost less. I even met some students who use the Wi-Fi all the time, so they only spend £5 per month on their phone. So that's like ways and means that you can actually save money on as well. Okay, so in terms of like student accommodation by the universities, we have all these on site, so number 1 to number 5. But as a postgraduate student, we normally give the Ramsay development reserved for PG students, simply because I know that a lot of the the postgraduate students complain about undergraduate students being really noisy, and that would probably be the case if you stay in Woburn Hill, because they have a lot of student accommodation there, and most of the undergraduate students live in Woburn Hill. So it will be very noisy because they will have parties and things like that as well. So if you are a postgraduate student, you want to stay in an RGU student accommodation, you can tell them you're a PG student, and you'll probably get the Ramsay development. Of course, you can always choose like Garty Towers, which is quite quiet. I would say there's not too many units like how Woburn Hill is, and we do have like all of them online that you can have a look at as well. And if you see that there's like a red line running across on the streets, that is because that's the bus line that runs from the city into RGU. So if you're looking for like your own flat to rent, for example, definitely find something close to Union Street, because from Union Street down to RGU it takes about like 20 minutes. And if it's further away, like on King Street, then it might be 30, 45 minutes one way into the city, depending on which part of King Street, because it's a pretty long street to be living on, okay? But definitely bus route 1 and 2 is the one that services buses all the way into RGU. There are also other privately built student accommodation. They can be cheaper than the ones that RGU offer. As you can see, they are mostly scattered across the Aberdeen area, and mostly in the city. But there are also some that's close to the university. The closest one is Caledon Court, and it's basically a walking distance to RGU. However, it is really expensive because it's kind of fancy. It has like a snooker table. There's like a mini theater for you to relax and things like that. So might be something that you want to consider as well. Right. So moving on to scholarships, we give an automatic £2,000 discount to our students that join us in the postgraduate courses of your first year of tuition fee. So that's around 3,400 over Canadian dollars. You can check out our funding and scholarship tool. Just need to type RGU scholarship, and usually that tool comes up. It has like a drop down box, which is kind of good because then you can just filter and use whatever you want. I would definitely say that you should also check OSAP out because we are OSAP eligible. So if you want to get some student loan through OSAP, definitely go through that as well. And in terms of student life, I would say please make use of the Careers and Employability Hub. They do help you check your CV, for example. They can help you do mock interviews and give you point you to the right directions in terms of online employability and resources, and things like that. Most important, I think, is that because this service is so underutilized, I feel like it's kind of a shame, especially even myself. I didn't think of using their services until I've graduated, which is on hindsight. That's why I'm telling everybody you should just book in your appointments with career consultants. They're all in 30 minutes block, but there's no limit on how many times you can see them to ask for feedback on your CV or mock interviews and assessments that they can prepare you for your job interviews next time and things like that. Okay. And other things that RGU have, advice, welfare, and support. So we have an inclusion center where the Disability and Inclusion Center is. There's counseling and well-being within the inclusion team as well, and also study skills. For study skills, I would say if you have trouble referencing or you need a little bit of help on that or some other study related skills, they do have workshops as well that you can join, and it's held throughout the year. So just there's timetable all published. Just feel free to join whichever you want, and you can just book them on. And the inclusion team also provide examination arrangements for extra time. There's dyslexia screening. There's also in-house assessments needed, and also support in organizing in-class support and things like that. I wouldn't talk too much about the chaplaincy, but it is there in case you need any of the chaplaincy services. And the most important one, I think, is Rest Life, because it talks, they basically are a team working alongside with our accommodation team, and the ambassadors are based in most of the RGU accommodation. So every single RGU accommodation will have someone from Rest Life, and they will organize social events throughout the year. So sometimes it'll be like a bus trip down to Edinburgh for a day, and it's only £5, or things like Halloween in one of the RGU accommodation sites or all the accommodation sites. And you don't need to be staying there to join. As long as you're an RGU student, you can just feel free to join any of the things that they arrange. And I find that quite useful, especially if you're in your first semester and you want to meet new students. This might be something that you want to take a look at. And in terms of RGU Union, they are there run by the students. One of the things that I would say you probably are enjoying right now, thanks to the student union, is having your Christmas breaks off. I wasn't so lucky as an alumni. I basically had to work on my assignments and exams during Christmas, because right after Christmas was when all of the exams and assignments were due. However, most of the courses at this time has been pushed forward, so you will finish your course, most of your courses, before Christmas, and then you get to enjoy Christmas. So these are one of the things that RGU Union did. The other one is safe taxi scheme. So say, for example, if you're stuck in the middle of the city with no money, you basically can still get onto the safe taxi scheme, get a taxi to send you back home without paying because you don't have money. But then RGU, the RGU Union will get someone to come, just drop you an email basically and tell you that, okay, you took this taxi ride the other day and you can pay up now and things like that. So this is just to make sure that, if you are in the middle of the city and you don't have money, you still can get home without any friends even, as long as you have a phone, or you can get somebody call it for you. Okay, and in terms of other clubs and societies, there are many types. So definitely sports-based ones, course-based ones and also interest and hobbies-based ones. So the interest and hobbies-based one, my favorite is Dumbledore's Army, because I'm a little bit of a Harry Potter fan. I'm a Potterhead. But if you're into like rowing, like you can see in a photo, or like basketball, volleyball, they have all of those clubs and societies. And I know that there's also the physiotherapy course. The physiotherapy society is also very, very popular. So definitely something that you might want to consider as well. And next on is how to apply. We do have a few ways to apply, but normally we just tell students to apply online. I would definitely encourage you to speak to our agent as well if you would like, because KOM will also be able to assist you with your visa applications and things like that, and their services is free. So I will share their contact details at the end of this presentation so you can keep them and contact them if you want to, okay? And other considerations when you are coming to study with us is, one of them is, and most important, is the visa. So you will be supported by our student immigration team on after you've made your deposit payment, because you will need to submit some documents towards the end of October, or should I say beginning of October onwards, because without those documents, we can't issue you a CAS, and the CAS is only valid for 3 months, which then you will need to apply for your visa, or else it will expire and you will need to go through the whole process to obtain your CAS as well. And if you're wondering what a CAS is, it's basically a paper that says that you're coming to study with RGU. We are a sponsored or a license provider for you to come study, a visa provider that you can come study with us. And we've gone through the due diligence of whatever that is required by UKVI to grant you your visa, and to just basically say, yes, you're coming to study with us and we're vouching for you. And then you go apply for the visa in the embassy. That is how it works, okay? If you have more questions, we can cross that bridge once you've like sort of passed through the interview and you're coming. Feel free to email me or the immigration team and we will assist you with that if you have any more questions, okay? And other requirements prior to starting the course, and I think these are some of the things that the course leader wanted me to highlight as well, which was you need to prepare evidence of an up-to-date immunization record, and that includes your polio, diphtheria, MMR, tuberculosis, varicella, and hepatitis B. And then all the any outstanding ones you can be completed by our occupational health service on arrival. And then you also need a full criminal record check from any country that you've been resident in for longer than 6 months over the last 5 years, and also a PVG, which is the protection of vulnerable groups. So if you have any certificates, please bring them with you, and these will be required for the first week of the course. Now, all this that I've mentioned from the beginning to the end about all the course information, these are things that we currently have. Some of them may subject to change. So we are just giving this as like more of like, so that you have an idea, but we need to adjust as and when necessary. So say, for example, the course might have changed a little bit from the course overview that I showed you just now because of COVID-19 and things like that, okay? Okay, so over to you, Abby.
Out of breath.
Any questions from you, Abhiraj? Okay, so some of the questions that I have that has been submitted to me slightly earlier. Right, so one of the students wanted to know, what are the placements like, and what kind of placements have you had?
Okay, so my first placement was an online placement. It was something brand new just due to COVID, where we had 2 of our own patients. We were split into small groups, into bubbles. And we had 2 of our own patients. It was 6 weeks long. We kind of just treated them generally for just deconditioning, that sort of thing. And we also had exercise classes that we ran once a week for that 6 weeks. The following placement, I was in Perth Royal Infirmary in Tay Ward. So it was the care of the elderly ward. And so there I actually I lived in hospital in the nurse housing, and It was 6 weeks there in a ward setting, which was definitely new for me. But it was a really good and eye-opening experience. I experienced a lot of different conditions. You got to see a more acute side of things because it was where people were coming in. It was more of a rehab ward, so they had all their like procedures, operations, things like that completed, and then they came to us to get the rehabilitation that they required before going home. So we've seen a lot of delirium, dementia, Alzheimer's. We've seen some strokes, Parkinson's, unfortunately, COVID, seizures. And unfortunately, because it's care of the elderly, you do experience patient deaths as well, which is unfortunate, but at the same time, it is a part of life. So it is another part of physio as well. So it does open your eyes to that. And that was another 6 weeks, like I said, but it was a really great experience. They were super friendly and easygoing and very helpful. And then my last placement that I just finished at the end of February was in Wood End Hospital here in Aberdeen. And it was kind of a whirlwind. I was supposed to start in MSK outpatients for hand therapy, but due to the new restrictions, it got changed to care of the elderly ward and hospital at home. But then care of the elderly had an outbreak of COVID, so then it was changed just to hospital at home. So I was doing physiotherapy care for patients in their homes. So I was with a physio mentor or my educator, and we were driving to people's houses and doing assessments, evaluating them, how they were doing, giving them basic exercises, providing equipment if they needed it, that sort of thing. And we've seen a huge range of different conditions there. Like again, stroke, dementia, delirium. But then you've seen things like extreme edema. You got, I'm trying to think, frozen limbs. I had a gentleman where his knees were frozen at 90 degrees. I had another patient pass away because his bowels weren't moving. I had another patient who had severe COVID and he was in and out of hospital the whole time. Parkinson's. It's a whole mixed bag with these people because hospital at home is very much a place where they're not sick enough to go into hospital, but they're sick enough to require attention from a whole multidisciplinary team. So you work with doctors and nurses and OTs and PTs and nutritionists and specialists, and everyone goes in to do a review of the patient to see what is the best step forward for them. Should they be admitted, or do we need to, take care of them for a few weeks? So it was definitely a different part of placement that I haven't experienced before, but it was very eye-opening as well.
Thank you for that. It's really interesting. I know a lot of people just think that, oh, physiotherapist, I go to clinic and that's all I do, but actually it's so much more than just that. Yeah. Okay. So next question is, what courses have you taken so far and what is expected of you as a student?
Okay. What courses? Like what courses in the program so far?
I guess it's like what subjects that you have taken in your, like what are the modules that you've taken?
Within this master's program?
Yeah.
So so they're all called HSM 15 something. So it's 150, 151, 152, 153. And I'm on 154 and 155 right now. So basically it's foundations of physiotherapy. But the whole idea is back to what Simone was saying, was that it is a spiral curriculum, so it's not put into different chunks. So it's not like this week we're looking at this or we're looking at MSK conditions for the next month and that's it. We'll move on to neuro. It's very much we'll have a mixed bag of we'll look at MSK and a bit of neuro put together, and then maybe we'll have respiratory for a couple days here. So it's very much all over the place because that's how practice is as physios. You're not going to get a month of just these types of patients. You're always going to get patients that have a mixed bag of different conditions and things like that. So they're very much trying to implement that into the teaching, which is important because you can't just rely on, having this knowledge for this set of time and then kind of wiping the slate clean and going on to the next set, because you have to be prepared for anything. So yeah, it's hard to tell you exactly what courses I've taken because, we've looked at musculoskeletal conditions, we've looked at respiratory care, we've looked at neurological conditions. And then based on that, we've gone into different things like stroke, like COVID, like COPD, like different arthritis or injuries like that. So it's difficult to kind of say what I've been taught in these different modules because it's all very, very different and all there's nothing specific for each one. It's very much here's all these different conditions you can encounter and this is kind of all the different things that you can do. So yeah, it's very much all over the place.
So what do you think is expected of you as a student? Do you find the expectation is really high, or do you find that it's like as things go along, you feel like you can cope and it's not too bad? And what are the professors and the lecturers like? Do you think that they are really friendly? Are they very open and they're approachable perhaps?
Yeah. So I absolutely love all of our professors. They're super nice and beyond supportive if you need it. If you have any questions or concerns, you can email them directly, and they can set up a meeting or a phone call. They're very, very helpful. For expectations of students, they do expect a lot from us. We are mature students and we are going from a postgraduate course into the professional work field. So we do need to take the onus of learning and educating ourselves onto our own shoulders. So, it is a lot of work, but as long as you're willing to put the work in behind what you're doing and, you're not spending all your time going out and partying or enjoying things, that's good to a point, but at the same time you are in a postgraduate professional course where they are going to push you to do what you can to your best possible ability, so that you can walk out and be a good physiotherapist at the end of this. So yes, it is tough, but at the same time we all rely on each other very, very well throughout the 2 years, because we're all going through it together, and that just helps us kind of divide up all the different things that are thrown at us. But at the same time, if you do need help or you do need assistance, then our professors are there to help and guide us through it and assist us when need be.
Okay, so what is it like living in Aberdeen?
So for me, it's very, very different because I come from a very, 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 very small town in Ontario, Canada. So Aberdeen is absolutely ginormous compared to what I'm used to.
Oh, it's not as big as Toronto. Don't worry.
Toronto is scary for me. Yes, but it is not as big as Toronto. But I absolutely love Aberdeen because it's got all this green space encompassed throughout it as well, which I really enjoy because I come from such a rural area. It kind of reminds me of home when you go to these different parks and, just walking across the trail that's just by the school. You go right by the River Dee and you can see wildlife. You see seals in there all the time. And so things like that, it's honestly a beautiful city, and in a 10-minute walk you can get downtown to Union Street, or in another 10-minute walk you can get to the river where it's just green space and trees. So you get a wide range of like different areas. So it's really nice.
Okay. So what about accommodation? Like how did you end up staying where you are staying, and how did you pick that? And, tell me more about that.
Yep. So for me, because I already did my undergraduate degree back home in Canada, I had lived with a roommate. I did student accommodation my first year, and I was not going back to that. Because I know this is a 2-year intense program. I needed to have some space to myself. So I just decided to go straight into private accommodations, looking into different companies that were having places for lease or for rent. So basically, I went on to Zoopla, and there's another one. If you go into the area where you can talk to students, I do have a blog post in there that has more specifics on exactly what the other app is called.
Yeah. So basically Abby has written some of her advice as well that's on the blog post. So it's a contact a student platform that I mentioned earlier. Definitely there is so many more as well. You can find that on our accommodation website as well. So like ASPC will have information on private flats and things like that. I do want to highlight that all the rooms in the UK are single rooms, so you will never need to share a room with a roomie. The only difference probably is whether it's an ensuite toilet or how many people you share the kitchen with. So obviously having a private flat and then maybe a 2-room or 3-room flat or a single room flat, the difference would be you have less people sharing the kitchen and the living space. Yeah. So okay. Next question is, what would you advise future students to bring with you?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Something that you can't live without. You can't bring Tim Hortons here, so I'm sorry.
It's in Glasgow now, though.
Yes, there is. They might actually open one here. They've put in some planning permission, so I don't know whether it will fall through or will it be a go. But yeah, so you can't take Tim Hortons here. I'm sorry, everyone. No Tim Hortons here. But
Yeah.
anything else would you advise students to bring with them?
See, that's tough because you can get everything here. For me, I would bring a little piece of home, basically, especially if you're coming by yourself. Like, it is. Don't get me wrong, it is an amazing experience, but it is also very difficult. And before I came over here, I was gung ho saying, I'm here for the 2 years. Like, I'm not going to come back home like for Christmas or for long-term breaks because this is important. I know I need to do my education so that I can come home, write my exams, and go to work. So I think that's one thing that really helped me get through the past year and a half, especially with COVID. And I think one of the detriments to the other international students in my class was that they didn't have that mindset. So I think the most important thing to bring over is a really strong mindset that this is only 2 years. And that it's not the end of the world, like it is, yes, it's 2 years of your life and it's going to be tough and it's going to be hard. But again, if you have that one small piece of home, like for me, I had like a big card that all my friends and family signed, hung up in my room with some pictures around it. You just have to consistently remind yourself that, yes, it's tough and it's hard, but there is an end goal in sight. And like, you just kind of have to remind yourself that you can do it and you can keep going, and yes, it's tough, but you will get through it. So I think that's honestly the most important thing to bring with you, is just that kind of mindset that you're here to do the education. Yes, if you want to go home, by all means go home, but I think my other peers have suffered that, be going home and coming back and going home and coming back with COVID and with all the breaks and stuff, that they've been not getting the most out of this experience because they didn't come with that kind of mentality. So I
Yeah,
think,
I definitely agree with you. A lot of people think that I've done my undergraduate, it's not going to be any harder, it's going to be the same. But actually, the master's program is actually really, really intense, and you're expected to put in those hours. It's not a breeze like how you would feel for an undergraduate course. It is a level higher, so you need to have that mindset about studying a master's program. Both of us are have done master's program or in the midst of it, so we can definitely attest to that. That a lot of our students had the very, very wrong mindset of, oh, this is going to be easy peasy. No, it's not. So you need to be prepared to work hard for it, but you will reap the rewards once you're finished.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Abby was like, yeah. Yeah.
100%. And you have to lean on each other while you're here. Like, you're like, these group of people that you're going to meet are like going to be basically your best friends forever after this, because this experience is so crazy and so insane that you go through it together, you lean on each other, that you are each other's like best friends at the end of it, because
Yeah.
there's no other way you would have gotten through it all without them. So leaning on each other and asking for help when you need it, there's nothing wrong with that. And that's really, really important to understand, because a lot of people think that it's a sign of weakness or you don't know what you're doing if you ask questions, but that's not what it is at all. Like, no question is a stupid question. All questions are valid. Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean that what they're doing is correct and you're just not getting it. It's no, you might just need to hear it a different way. And if you have a question, more than likely 5 other people in your class have that exact same question.
Yeah, just didn't feel like they want to ask those questions. So I benefited from that as well sometimes. And sometimes it's just like, no, I have a question, I need to interrupt you and things like that. And I thought there's no silly questions, like Abby said, definitely. Okay, so one more question. And every Raj, if you have any question, like, please feel free to like type it into the chat box as well if you want to, okay, or the Q&A. Just feel free to do that. One last question so far is, Abby, what have you learned now and you wish that you knew at the beginning of the program?
So yeah, I don't entirely like this question, particularly because I don't believe it's good to have all the knowledge going into something,
Mhm.
because that's part of the process of going through something.
Okay.
You can't have all the knowledge and not gain any experience or knowledge if you go through this process. So I knew everything that I needed to know coming into this. Like, yes, I learned some things through bumps and scrapes here and there, but that's how the whole process goes, and yes, it would have been nice to know that, I was going to be locked up in my apartment for a year, or, like, I will do well on these assignments if I do this, but that's just a whole part of the learning process. Like, everyone is so different, but so similar at the same time, that, everything just comes to people differently. And, you know, it's just a way of life. You can't know everything, and even now, I'm sure in a week from now, I'm going to learn new things that I'm not going to know today, that I would have appreciated knowing today, that I'll learn in a week. So, but at the same time, it's like it's just the whole part of the journey that is what makes you into the person that you are at the end of it.
Yeah, I think for me, if I have been asked this question, for me, it'd probably be like, do not drag your feet about the visa. Because I thought it was going to be easy. And it was like, what? I need to prepare this. Like, oh my God, it's so daunting. But actually, at the end of the day, when you finished with it and you realize that actually it's not so bad, it's just that you need to get all your ducks in order and then get all of them sorted in a day. And that's it. And then I get a lot of students panicking in the last minute saying like, I didn't know how to prepare this and that. It's like, don't worry, calm down, it
Yeah,
will get sorted.
there's lots of instructions online to what you need to bring and things like that. For me, the one positive thing was I was accepted a whole entire year before I actually entered the program. So I
Mhm.
had a whole year to prep everything. So I was researching different places to live, rates of rent, how to do the visa, what I needed for my visa, what I needed for school. So it's all the backup work that you do beforehand that is really, really important. and that'll make the transition that much easier. So yes, it seems tedious and, boring to look at different places to live or looking up, different papers that you need to take to your visa application.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's all worth it because it makes it that much smoother.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, it looks like there's no more questions this evening. So thank you so much, Abby, for your help and answering all those questions.
Hey,
And
can I ask
thank
a
you,
quick
everyone.
question?
Okay, Aviraj, what was your question?
So I just had a question about something that you mentioned earlier in the presentation about how the program has a student-led approach and it doesn't really have lectures. So did you find kind of like that student-led approach did you find any problems or any challenges with that?
So, yes and no. Depends on how you feel about group work, which is always an interesting topic. No, so there are I wouldn't call them now. I would call them lectures because they're online, which is a pain. But usually we're in a class, and yes, we're sitting down going through a PowerPoint, but a lot of it is very interactive, where we break off to groups. We do different things together, different activities basically, and then we present them as a group. So it is very much student led. But at the same time, you do have some of those lectures where you have to sit and listen to information, but at the same time, you're interacting with the professor because they just won't give you the answer straight up. They expect you to interact with them. The issue that I have sometimes, that a lot of us have sometimes, is some students tend to pull more weight than others in group work, which you will see anywhere, which is sometimes a detriment if you're in a good group or a bad group, or it's all very dependent. I've come to the point where it's like, we're in a group, I've been assigned this part of the group assignment, this is what I'm going to do, and you have to put your foot down about that, because if you end up doing everything, then people will just expect you to do everything. So you have to it'll be sometimes really hard, especially for me who wants to help everyone. It's very much, I'm doing this part, you're doing this part, and once I'm done, I'm not touching it anymore, because just because you don't have your part of the project done doesn't mean I haven't done my job. It's up to you to take that responsibility on. And so professors will see that if you're ready and able to present your part of the project, but the other people don't have as much done, or it's not as clean and crisp as yours, they're going to see that they didn't get as good of a job out of it than you did. So it's in between, but at the same time, usually you have other groups that do similar things, so there's lots of crossover, and then the professor will give you the relevant information.
Plus, I'd like to add that this is something that happens in real working situations as well in the office. And next time when you're working in a multidisciplinary team, you need to learn how to work with other people from different departments and things like that. So it's actually something that's prepping you for the real work practical experience that you're going to get in the real working world anyway.
But would you say the group work part of it was only kind of in the classroom, or did that also translate to the assignments? And would you say most of the assignments were also group work as well?
So in this course, you only have one assignment per module. HSM 151, which I believe is part of your first semester, first year, Foundations of Physiotherapy, you'll have, they're called OSPEs, where they're practical based assessments, where you go in, you assess a patient, you provide treatment, that sort of thing, and then leave. All the other modules are just one paper based, which sounds absolutely terrifying, because when I came here, usually you have a midterm, a final exam, maybe a paper or two there, or some homework that makes up a small amount. But here you only have the one assignment, the one paper that's due at the end of the module. And that is done by yourself. So you don't have to worry about group work there, which is one thing really great, because you don't have to rely on others But at the same time, it's like, well, sometimes it's also nice to have the input from your friends that you do work really well with. You can still do that. You just have to submit a final piece of like paper that is just your own piece of work. Yeah, so no, like group work is basically like in class, in your like practical classes, online right now, like different presentations, that sort of stuff. And right now we just started our dissertation. So the beginning of our dissertation, specifically for my group, because we're doing a qualitative study on the outlook of AHP students, we're doing interviews with our own cohort of students, and we're able to work together on that to be able to have 7 or 8 different interviews come together to be our collective information or research information that we can use to build up our study. So that is like the only assignment that we have where there is some part of group collaboration. But again, the end result is I have to hand in my very own piece of work that will be assessed for just me.
Did you
I
ever?
would also add that
Yeah.
if you have any questions about your assignments, don't feel free to always email the lecturers to ask if you think that you are maybe running in the wrong direction, like give some points and summarize and drop them an email that is for this assignment, this is what I'm prepared to talk about and elaborate about. Is it in the right direction? And if you're not too sure about it, they will tell you like, I think this is not something that you should be talking about, or maybe you need to talk more about this or add this into your assignments. The lecturers will sort of like lead you along the way as well. So don't be too terrified about that, although it's one assignment that's 100% mark, for example.
Okay, sounds good. Did you ever find that stressful that like pretty much your entire mark just depends on this one thing?
Absolutely.
I've been there, done that. Let me tell you, it's not as bad. Like I said, because what I did was email the lecturers and said, I'm not too sure whether I'm doing this correctly. And 100% is really scary. And so the lecturers basically, a few different cases. So one of them said they came in and they gave us like extra classes. Like this is like a 1 hour consultation time. All of you that have a question about your assignment, come and see me. Tell me what you're planning to write about, and I'll tell you whether it's right or wrong. So you will leave that consultation hour feeling assured that you know that you're going to the right direction. It's just how you present your points and how you write them is going to be another thing. But you know that you're definitely not going to fail because you are addressing the right question and giving the right answers. It's your presentation that's going to, and how you argue those points will play a role in that. And then some others is just the lecturers would just tell you this is what I expect of you to talk about in general, and then you need to go and do your research and substantiate all your points with that and make sure that you have read up about it.
Yeah, so what they'll actually do is, I actually have an example because I have my papers right here. So they'll actually give you an outline of like what the assessment is. So like what it is about, how many words per section, that sort of thing. But then they'll actually give you a breakdown of the actual assignment. So this is what you get for an F or an E or a D, C, B, A, all the way up, and what different each part needs to include in order to achieve that grade. So yes, it is stressful, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, you get to spend the whole module fixing and tweaking and working on this piece of paper that allows you to not only be able to focus more on what your lecturers are teaching you, but you can also focus on making a really good piece of work at the same time, because you're not having to stop, learn and cram all the stuff that you learned for half a module to then write an exam and then forget all about it and then do the exact same thing for the second half. So a lot of this is like critical evaluation, critiquing different things. So it's not just, this is the information, this is what it says, here you go. It's very much your idea based. So this is what the information from these papers says. This is how I'm interpreting it. And this is what I think it is becoming now, or what it's actually trying to prove. So it is very much your point of view and not like the professor's point of view. Like they can argue their point of view, but as long as you can give a good argument for your point of view, they can't say no. They can't fail you for that. So that's
Exactly.
the one positive.
That makes sense. I just had another question, kind of switching gears to kind of like just the city in general. Did you ever have like any concerns with like the safety of the city? Like what did you think about that?
Honestly, not at all. And that sounds really weird. So
No, no, don't worry, Abby. It's not. We actually have stats to back that up. Aberdeen's actually the second safest city in the UK for quite a few times already. We are a purple flag city as well. So it's like some benchmark about safe city and things like that. So the things that you see about like London and like some weird stabbing and things like that, it hardly happens here. I'm not going to say that it doesn't, because things will happen wherever you are in whichever city, but it's definitely a safe city. I've walked in the city center at 3 a.m. when all the clubs closed, and I don't feel like I am in danger at all. And and we're both girls, we will definitely feel more dangerous than the guys. So I can tell you that no, I've never felt like it's a dangerous city to live in. I don't see like people lurking around, in places, and feeling like you have to be really careful and things like that.
Yeah, no, everyone here is super nice and super helpful. Like, and you will notice if you decide to come here, the Scottish have a certain way of life where they sometimes enjoy a certain beverage at a certain time of day, and that makes them even friendlier.
I would say it's not just the Scottish. Like I've had afternoon beers in England as well, but definitely Scottish are better at it, I would say.
They're so like, I don't know what happens, but they become like these teddy bears that will do anything to help you if you need it, even though they probably have no idea what's going on. But no, I haven't had any concerns whatsoever. Like I walk downtown all the time because I live like a 10-minute walk from Union Street, and I like safety honestly isn't on the forefront of my mind because it's just like it's not an unsafe area. Like I don't feel insecure or unsafe. I feel more than okay just walking around or hopping on a bus and getting lost and figuring out how to come back. Like it's not an issue whatsoever. Yeah, no.
All right, sounds good. I guess kind of maybe the last question that I had was just like the transition that, or if there was a transition that was made, that the school made pre-COVID to like COVID time. Do you think like that was an easy transition for the student to make? And do you think like how was that for you guys?
Yeah, it was very difficult just because this is not something that the school's seen coming or we even seen coming. So for my cohort especially, it was all new techniques, ways of teaching, things like that. So nothing that we were doing was ever tried and tested before. So even the professors were just saying, okay, we'll try this and see what happens. And if it doesn't work, we'll try and figure it out and go from there. Like we were running trial tests for different ways to do online consultations with patients. And, we were just being like testers for even the NHS to figure out different kinks and things to do these consultations or to talk to patients. So because it wasn't something that was expected or something that was done prior to this year or this past year, then it wasn't something like it was all brand new. So yes, it was definitely a really, really, really difficult transition. But saying that, they have done a lot of work. They've worked really, really, really hard to try and give us the best possible experience with the the conditions that the government is setting for us, the different restrictions, things like that. And when things are starting to open up more, we're getting more opportunities to have more hands-on classes. So just today we got word that we're going to have 2 more days full of hands-on classes in May. And that's because the government just decided to open up and be a little bit more lenient towards us students. So, because if you're not deemed essential, then you're not allowed to do that. So they're finally opening it up, saying, like, these students need to be learning by doing hands-on teaching. So we're going to class them as somewhat essential to give them more time so that when they go into the workforce, they have that hands-on training in their pocket. So it was difficult in the beginning, don't get me wrong. And it has been a difficult transition all the way through because, everything from classes going online to being into lockdown, there's a whole bunch of different things that students had to face. Physical health, mental health, all those things kind of came colliding together. And so professors were very much aware of what was going on, so it was touch and go for a little while just to try and figure out what would work and what wouldn't work. But they kind of came around and they addressed the whole mental health issue and saying, we're giving you the basic necessities right now because we know that this right now is not ideal. This is not what you signed up for, but we're doing what we can to give you the best education possible. And that's all you can really ask for at this point because no one expected this to come. We still got 2 out of our 3 placements to be in person. We still have another 3 coming up. And we're getting more and more practical classes as the days go by based on the restrictions being lifted. So, it's a slow transition, but, they did what they could, just like any university, anywhere. And, they acknowledged that, yes, it was difficult and there were probably bumps and trips and stuff that they could have handled better, but it was a learning experience for everyone.
Yeah, and I would also like to add, actually, RGU is the 3rd largest online distance learning provider in the UK. So we actually have all the softwares, if you make to call it, to deliver classes online, at least the lectures and things like that. But because the physiotherapy course is so hands-on, I know that in the back end of it, the lecturers had some best practice exchange as well with others, faculty members, to see, like from other schools, like how can we do this and present and address the practical part of it online. So these were like some of the things that were happening at the back end as well. And I would say that RGU probably have had an easier transition slightly compared to some of the universities who don't offer online distance learning, because then they didn't have any software whatsoever, nothing to fall back on, nobody with experience to even discuss about and really talk about how to deliver classes online. So we're in a sense a little bit more fortunate than some of the other universities, definitely.
Yeah, and even some of our professors, like while they were at home and trying to teach us, like they would use their kids to show us different techniques to do different tests and stuff like that. So, and they would videotape it and put it online for us to watch. And they got as much time for us to do in-class testing and practical classes and stuff like that as possible. They put us into groups so that we could work on each other. Like we were limited to those people, but at least we were able to work hands-on. So yeah, it's been tough, but at the same time, I couldn't ask for more work on their end.
All right, that's sounds good. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much, Abby, for your time as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.